It's the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. For more on the Seminoles, including Osceola's coverage from veteran Seminole insiders, message boards, Osceola virtual happy hours, and more, go to theosceola.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines podcast. My name is Patrick Burnham. I'm a football writer for the Osceola and host of this podcast. Joining me today are Jerry Kutz, the owner and publisher of the Osceola, Bob Ferrante, the Osceola's managing editor, and former FSU offensive lineman and Osceola football analyst Mark Salva. Today we will be focused on FSU's offensive line and who might be the starter at quarterback against Georgia Tech on September 12th. But before we get started, we wanted to share with our listeners who don't subscribe to the Osceola some of the premium content you can access on theosceola.com by signing up for a free 30-day free trial by using the discount code FREE30, FREE30 on our subscription page. We are also offering a 20% discount off an annual subscription by using the discount code FSU20. Some of the items that we've talked about this week that you can access by joining the Osceola include Isaiah Bolden's move to wide receiver from defensive back, the fact that Jacksonville State has replaced Sanford on FSU's schedule as their 11th opponent and as they're out of conference game. We also have a feature on running back LaDainian Webb, who looks like he's going to earn his way into the one of the backfield rotation with Deshaun Coburn and some of the other freshmen. We also take a look at Leonard Warner, a senior linebacker, who in January was considering leaving FSU through the transfer portal, but who has now decided to stay and has turned into one of the leaders on the defense. We also take a look at head coach Mike Norvell's path as a walk-on at the University of Central Arkansas after he awarded scholarships to tight ends Wyatt Rector and running back Deontay Sheffield this week, and his unique perspective on what it means to be awarded a scholarship and the enjoyment he gets out of rewarding scholarships to walk-ons as a head coach. Guys, welcome to the show.
I am tickled to death to be here.
Well, we're tickled to have you get back, Mark.
Just happy to be able to talk football with the season ahead.
Yeah, we're about 2 weeks into not having many off-field issues to talk about. And Jerry, obviously one of the things that we mentioned coming into the show is we did want to talk about what's going on at the quarterback position as it pertains to the Georgia Tech game specifically. And it looks like it's a two-man race between James Blackman and Tate Rodemaker simply because of the availability of the other two. Chubba Purdy is hurt, and Jordan Travis has missed the first two scrimmages of the year. So kind of tell us what you're hearing about the quarterback battle as it stands today.
Well, you return a veteran quarterback in James Blackman, so that's a good place to start. And then the freshman, Tate Rodemaker, who came in early, came in the spring and was able to go through the off-season conditioning program, a few days of spring practice. We only had 3. But he got his feet wet, and he's making a little bit of a run. He's at least providing us with a backup. And as you said, Pat, it looks like a two-man race. And it's great to have 2 going into that game. You'd like to have 3. But Tate's really made a run of it. I've had some friends who have gotten to watch the spring practice who are very knowledgeable on quarterbacks. And they're very impressed with him. He's the son of a high school football coach there at Valdosta. Storied program, plays a very high level of football. And he's making quick reads, getting the ball out of there. He can spin it. And I've heard that he's a better athlete than most of us realize. He's a good-looking prospect for the future. And he's given James a little bit of a push.
Bob, any takeaways you've had this week from either the quarterback positions or anything that Coach Norvell has spoken about up through Thursday of this third week of camp?
I think in general he's happy overall, big picture. He sees progress in what they're learning and their development. The big question marks are developing the consistency that he wants to see and not making those mistakes. It doesn't sound like turnovers are a problem as much as just kind of getting settled in and making good decisions and knowing where to go with the ball, not taking a sack, throw it away, find your hot read, all those little things. I agree. I think we all kind of feel like this is a two-man race as it currently stands. It's going to, branch out where we may see Chubba Purdy or Jordan Travis down the road, whether that's in packages or if they're back into a competition at some point. I've felt from the start, Florida State has 4 quarterbacks, and you're going to probably see all 4 of them play at some point. But it is good to see that, we think Mike Norvell has 2 really good choices to go with. He's got to make that decision really soon because you have to start game planning for Georgia Tech.
Hey, if I could add to what Bob and I have been talking about, this isn't a failure on the part of Chubba or of Travis. They just haven't been able to compete.
Right.
And so as they get healthy, they're going to get back into this battle. But this is it's certainly not any slight on either one of those two.
No, injuries happen, and nothing you can do about them.
I'll say my only thought is, it's the good news is we have a true freshman pushing the incumbent. The bad news is we have a true freshman pushing the incumbent. It's both terrifying and exciting at the same time, right? Let's face it, he's a true freshman. So that's really kind of my thought on it, and I think that pretty much encompasses the whole deal.
Well, Bob, you mentioned the development at multiple positions, and obviously probably no other position besides quarterback is more intriguing to Florida State fans than that of the offensive line. On our Osceola message board this week, Jerry took a poll, what 6 positions on offense he asked for players. He didn't ask for positions. He asked for 6 positions or 6 players that you're interested in watching the development of this season. And my answer was not flippant on the message boards. It was very honest. I want to see left tackle, left guard, center, right tackle, and quarterback, regardless of who's playing. And, of course, we're lucky enough to be joined by Osceola football analyst Mark Salva, who played offensive line at Florida State for 4 years. And, Mark, before we start breaking down each position or each member of the offensive line, kind of tell us about what you think Florida State fans can expect as far as improvement based on what we've heard and the additions to the personnel group there.
Well, the past few years, the problems up front have been relatively obvious. Multiple missed assignments, bad technique, even to a layman can look and see that the technique wasn't great, not very physical, not a lot of push. Those are the things that have hampered us the last 3-4 years is the offensive line. And it's to the point where we're a joke around the NCAA, So, and I maintain this in previous comments, is that if we just eliminate missed assignments, if we just eliminate pre-snap penalties, if we just eliminate, the things that we can control, play with greater attitude and effort, and because being physical and being aggressive, it's a mindset. It has very little to do with ability and has everything to do with mindset. My offensive line coach, Wayne McDuffie, said, every time you put your hand on the ground, your attitude is, I'm going to whip your you-know-what, and there's nothing you can do about it. That was the mindset that was drilled into us daily. And if that mindset can take hold in the offensive line and you control those controllables, you just by virtue, you're going to be better regardless of the talent level. Now everything I'm hearing is that that process is ongoing, and again, understand it doesn't happen overnight either. These are things that got to be learned. These are things that got to be drilled and instilled. So all that to say this: if Coach Atkins and Coach Norvell and the structure of practice, and they have the ability to try to drill these things into these guys, they'll be better. It can't be worse.
Yeah, and of course, the one good news that we have heard, it came from Adam Fuller. You mentioned, blown assignments and things of that nature going back to last season. And, he has said after coming out of Believe scrimmage 2 that the offensive line was working in unison, which means they may not be necessarily opening up large holes or protecting the patent. They may be getting beat one-on-one, but they're working as a unit. Bob, just based off what you've heard from the coaches and seen on limited highlight clips and what we saw this past spring, would you think that we'll see improvement on the offensive line this year?
I'm optimistically looking at a baby step forward. I think we got to be realistic. You can't expect this to be an incredibly powerful group of all ACC linemen, but can the coaches, are they willing to adapt? Are they willing to utilize the strengths of their playmakers, but, really cater the offense to what the offensive line can handle? Not asking the quarterback to look deep down the field. That's just not going to work. Utilizing the tight end like Cam McDonald to help out the lineman on the edge, whether it's a left tackle like Darius Washington or a right tackle like Devontae Love-Taylor. You've got to use the tight end, the fullback, the halfback as part of your pass protection scheme and your run blocking scheme. If they can do that, if they can just take a step forward, and we're hearing enough positives, but as with anything with the offensive line, it seems like 4 guys could be doing something right, but if one guy isn't doing that exact thing right, the pieces fall apart, and that's something that's just historically been a problem here. So it's minimizing those missed assignments and turning things around.
Yeah, because typically if one guy makes a mistake on the offensive line, it can set up to 2 defenders free because obviously you've gone the wrong way or double down when you shouldn't double down. But, I agree with what you both said. I think we'll see some improvement. They went into the season in the camp looking for an 8-man rotation. We took a little bit of a hit this week when true freshman guard Zane Herring went down with a shoulder injury. He is down for the season. It may be in the long run, other than the fact that he was not going to be. Nobody's going to use a year of eligibility this season. He now has a de facto redshirt year, and obviously it's hard to play. It's hard to transition as a true freshman to the offensive line. So it may be a blessing in disguise for Zane that he is going to be able to be in the weight room for another year before he starts competing for playing time. But he's a nice young man. You hate to see him get hurt. All right, so let's jump into who we think we know we're going to see on the offensive line. And, what I am projecting are 2 definitive starters, possibly 3, and then it gets a little murky after that. I feel, based on what we saw in this last fall from a true freshman in Darius Washington and what we've heard about him from Coach Alex Atkins in camp, I think Darius Washington will be the starting left tackle. Mark, I'd like for you and Bob to share what you've seen from Darius over the course of spring practice, the 3 days we did get to see him. And then, of course, he was limited in spring practice, but he was out there. And then, of course, what we saw last fall, particularly against in his 3 starts.
Yeah, all I can go on is what I remember seeing him do in the fall. And I think, when we were doing our breakdowns of those games, that was one of the few positives we kept bringing out on the offensive line was when Darius was playing, as a true freshman, right? I was really impressed with some of the things he was able to do naturally. So he is a natural tackle to me. The way he can get his body in certain positions, the way he sits in his hips, the way he uses his hands, his athletic ability. He kind of reminded me a little bit of old Rob Stevenson back in the in the early 90s there on the Casey Weldon years. Just kind of athletic, good athlete, well balanced. And so, yeah, that's somebody I think you can build on.
Bob, your thoughts on Darius?
Yeah, I agree. Coach Atkins has mentioned him as being really athletic. And the big question with him is that shoulder healthy enough to punch and battle in the one-on-ones with a guy who's going to be pass rushing off the edge. And I think when you have Josh Kando every day in practice to make you better, that's how you're prepared for game 1 and game 2. So I'm with you guys. I think Darius is your best option at left tackle. I think he's a really good option too.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to seeing how he does this year, and hopefully he's able to stay healthy and be the answer that FSU's been looking for at left tackle for the last several years. I think starting at one of the guard positions will probably be FSU's best offensive lineman this year. It will be sophomore Dante Lucas. I think he's going to be at either left or right guard. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Just a matter of what side they decide to start him on. But, Dante certainly is an impressive athlete. He's a strong kid, bends well, has a chance, in my opinion, to be an all-conference performer. The only knock you had against Dante last year was, he had a little bit of maturity issues and how he handled himself before games and kind of let his temper get the best of him sometimes. But, Mark, you've mentioned it. One of the things that you probably like about Dante is that killer mentality and that he is aggressive all the time. Kind of talk to us about what you see out of Dante.
Yeah, Dante, I see, is one of those interior maulers. Once he gets his hands on you, he's a wide, powerful guy, powerful hips, just that prototypical guy you want in there to try to move people, and take up space. So he has the potential to be that guy. Now, last year as a true freshman, he showed flashes of some things, but not real consistent. I'm interested to see how he's progressed over this fall camp. He definitely has ability, but it's up to this point, in my eyes, untapped ability. He definitely has a profile that can fit in. We need him to take the next step and be that dependable player that, we know we're going to get 11 games out of him and he's going to play at a high level. He's got to be that guy, because if you can put him next to Washington, and Washington also becomes that guy, and I think we're well on our way to being, where we want to be, where we expect to be, and not where we've been.
Bob, what are your impressions of Dante coming out of last season?
Yeah, he feels and plays like a guard. I know we've talked about, do you try him at right tackle? Does he, could he play that position? I think the answer is probably yes, but he feels like a natural guard. And I think that's where he's going to be most effective. Florida State's gotten in that position where you had to try some guards at tackle because of injury and performance. But I'm happy that it sounds like guards are guards and tackles are tackles right now. And you have to kind of see what happens with injuries throughout the season. But Dante feels like a guy you can really build an offense around. I mean, I'm not sure what Devontae Love-Taylor is going to give you, but if he's good enough and if he's lined up, next to Dante Lucas, I think you can run behind that. I really do. And then the question is, how do you pick up the pass blocking and does it work out? So you've got some young building blocks. You're going to have some big growing pains, no doubt, but some guys you can build with.
Well, you bring up Devontae Love-Taylor, and when he met with the press, he made it sound as if he is getting most of his reps at right tackle, which was what he was brought in to do. He's gotten good reviews from the coaching staff, so it looks like right now he's going to be the starter going into week one. Obviously, he kind of reminds me of a smaller version of Ryan Roberts from last year, another graduate transfer, but certainly brings a wealth of experience, much needed experience to the offensive line with 16 starts and 32 games played at FIU. So, Mark, with the offensive line being unproven and very young at most spots, how valuable can Love-Taylor's experience be and pay dividends to this unit and this offense?
Without knowing a little too much about the player himself, I would hope that a guy with that kind of experience would come in and set the tone for how that whole room acts and works. Obviously in a group that's, when you have a group that size working together, you're going to have, cutting up, you're going to have whatever. Hopefully he's able to set a professional, quote unquote, tone with those guys. I hope. I would think with a guy with his experience, that would be the role that he could fill, because that's needed for sure. And he has credibility for the experience he does have. In terms of the kind of player that he is, the little bit I've seen from his, previous stints, look, all we need him to be is dependable. Get his hands and his feet in the right places at the right time, I don't think he's going to be a guy that's just going to just start mauling people off the ball. He in pass protection, is he athletic enough to block the guys we need him to block? We'll see, but he is an experienced guy who we at that position we needed for sure.
Bob, what are your thoughts on what we've heard from Devontae and what we saw out of him in the spring?
Yeah, same as what Mark's saying. I think experience was, sorely needed with this group. He needed somebody with some game experience. And hey, worth mentioning, he's beaten Miami. It's really important that he's kind of been there and done that against some Power 5 competition. You can't really replace that. I'm not sold that he's going to be great, but to Mark's point of be dependable, be as good as you can be. And I have a feeling like he'll line up next to Lucas. And again, I think you can probably run the ball with those guys. And if you can get 4 to 5 yards consistently running behind those guys, I think you take that if you're Coach Norvell.
Yeah. And go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, I was going to give you a spoiler alert. I think in that first ball game, we all need to pay really close attention to Love on this, because what I'm hearing from people on the field who are out there watching it is he could be your starting left tackle. He's a lot better than people projected he'd be. So I haven't seen it with my eyes yet, but people I trust think he's a really, really good player. So that's my spoiler alert.
Well, I'd welcome that for sure. We need that.
We absolutely do. And if he is anywhere near as good as what I'm being told, he gives you depth at left tackle if you need it. If something were to happen and that guy go down, you might be able to move him to left tackle.
Yeah, you'd like to have 3 tackles, 3 guards, and 2 centers is what you like to have, minimum. And unfortunately for us, the bar is really low. We just need him to be able to play dead in a cowboy movie.
Exactly right. Get run over slowly.
Exactly.
Well, let's move on to the 2 positions that have the most questions. You just mentioned it, center, and whoever's going to play guard opposite Dante. I think that there's probably 5 guys vying for those 2 spots, and at center particularly Andrew Baselli and Bavion Johnson, and possibly Maurice Smith, a sophomore. But Maurice has also played guard last year, started at guard in a game or 2 last year, and obviously then you have Thomas Schrader, a true freshman, who has stood out to coaches, who was planning to be started out at guard upon arriving at Florida State. So you got those 5 guys. The way I'm looking at this right now is I think Maurice Smith will end up starting at the other guard. He's been cross-trained at both guard and center. And then we've had we're going to be very honest. Coach Mike Norvell's plan was to allow press at practice all the time before COVID-19. We've had very limited access to practice and had very limited footage of practice. So we are really trying to decipher what we're hearing from the coaches, and we're also having to take what we saw this past spring and this last season to try to determine what we think is going on there. So, in my opinion, I think we'll see Andrew Baselli at starting center and Maurice Smith at the guard opposite Lucas. And then Bavion could play center or guard. It sounds like Schrader may continue to push. And then, of course, you've got Brady Scott, who started at left guard and right tackle this year. But, guys, just give me your thoughts on how you think that guard and center positions may work out.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Pat, when you said you got 5 for 2 positions there, and it may not get settled all year. It may just depend on who performs when, et cetera, et cetera. I remember last year just being so frustrated with Bavion Johnson, the guy that looks the part, obviously has the physical look and what appears to be the ability, but just never quite put it together. I've been in places where you've had guys that have been, in programs for 3 or 4 years and never did it. And then some for some reason, light comes on their senior year and they're world beaters. And I like to hope that maybe this change with coaches and attitude and everything else, that maybe hopefully a light comes on for him, because he could really, really help us physically with his ability in what he can do. Now, that being said, watching Baselli play center last year, again, I go back to being dependable. That guy looked to me to be dependable. Is he the most physical, imposing guy out there? No, but I think he gets – and the important thing for center also is get everybody in the right places and get them on the right guys. It looked to me like he had command of what that was. He was, he'd go up to the line of scrimmage, he'd look it over, you hear him making calls, pointing, snap the ball, get on the right guy. That can't be undervalued. That's an important part, an important job for most centers and most offenses. So how that shakes out, I don't know. I'd like for, hopefully Babianic is able to contribute there, but I think Boselli gives you the dependable guy. As far as guards go, it's just kind of underwhelming right now. And, it's a great opportunity for somebody to step up, not having seen anybody practice or play. I would, having seen Brady Scott last year, hopefully he's able to contribute. Maybe he's the guy. I don't know. Maurice Smith played a little. It's just hard to say without being able to see how they are now, currently at this point. So we'll see when they roll them out. I mean, I'm not offering anything. I can make a prediction if you want, but it won't be worth it.
Well, that's what I say. We're honestly, being honest with anybody listening, we're reading the tea leaves. We do not have quite as much insight as we'd have if we were able to see them. So we're basing this off past experience that we've seen them either in spring or last fall. And Bob, I know you and I both. I'm not a big coincidence guy. And Florida State had their best game of the year offensively when Andrew Baselli was at center. I think he started 2 games, if I'm not mistaken. I think both of us think that he has some intangibles that maybe the others don't have at center. And also, I think that maybe Bavion might be better off without the ball in his hand. So, give me your thoughts on Andrew Baselli.
Yeah, you're right. Baselli started against Syracuse and Boston College, and those were both, take it with a grain of salt with what defense they faced. But FSU put up 30 points or more in both of those games. It looked like the offense was moving really, really well. I think Baselli knows what needs to be done, does it well, calls out the assignments. He's not the way you draw him up as a all ACC caliber lineman. But it seems to just work really well when he's there kind of calling the shots. I know you're big on Maurice Smith, Pat. I think that's probably a good choice at guard. How the rest of it plays out, let's just see how it does develop. But you have to develop backups. You have to develop 8. That's what Norvell is trying to get to. Dillingham, Atkins, they're all trying to get to 8. So Bavian has an important role if he's part of that 8 as a backup center, as a backup guard. Same with Maurice Smith. Could be a backup center, backup, or starting center, backup, whatever. In some combination, you got to get to 8. So as much as we're trying to find 5, we also got to find 8 and develop guys to get past 8 too. So I think we're starting to see the pieces come together here a little bit.
Yeah, and I think 2 of the guys that have made an impact on the coaches, particularly Atkins and Norvell, have been 2 true freshmen. And Thomas Schrader and Robert Scott. And Mike Norvell mentioned after the second scrimmage that these guys are making a legitimate run at playing time this year. So I played as a true freshman on an offensive line at a much lesser level. And it was a hard adjustment. The first game I got into against a varsity college nose tackle, I was shocked, to be quite honest. So, Mark, we've heard Coach Norvell and Coach Atkins brag on Robert Scott and Thomas Schrader, both true freshmen. And I think I know what your answer is going to be. Does that, number one, is he sending a message to those older offensive linemen that you better get the job done, or I'm going to play with these young kids and let them develop? And B, is it saying more about them as players, or more about what he has returning, or a combination of both?
Yes to all of that, right? Yes to all of that. So You know, offensive line is a position where players can contribute if all the physical things being equal, you know, because you have guys around you for the mental things to help put you in the right direction, put you on the right guys. And that's kind of comforting. I mean, I played as a true freshman very early, you know, and had no idea what I was doing. And I look at Jamie Dukes, he said, go get that guy. I said, okay, cool. And, you know, and that's the kind of thing you have as an offensive lineman. So if they're physically able to compete, then yes, that's great. If all things being equal, you know, you have a guy that maybe doesn't know quite what to do or is quite a little whatever, but you have an upperclassman who knows what to do but physically can't do it. Well, obviously you're going to go with the young guy and live with your growing pains. So yeah, I'm sure Norvell has. There's some of that. You know what? You need to pick up your game, or I'm going to go with the young guy, and we'll live with it. And that's not a bad thing. So the fact that these guys are competing is exciting. It means we're recruiting the right kinds of guys. And, you know, hopefully there's more of that to come. I mean, you need that up front and it help build depth and all of that. But I guarantee you this, those guys are probably going to have to play at some point.
Well, let me ask you another question. I saw this. I don't know if there's an article or someone was tweeting about it. But their concern was that Florida State's offensive line going against a good defense could be a detriment to their development in practice and how it transfers into games. And I've always been a believer that if you play your toughest opponents in practice, the games are easier. Do you think the lack of success they had on this past Saturday scrimmage, do you think that stunts their development as a group, or do you think it'll make it? I mean, you know, we've heard a lot about Florida State's defense and the fact that they can be very good up front and at linebacker. Won't that make this group stronger going into the season as opposed to weaker?
This is the thing that will make us or break us. It's how you respond to that, right? It's if I get punched in the mouth, am I going to punch back? Or if I get punched in the mouth, am I just going to pout and cower? You know, if these guys, if they want to have that tough guy attitude and they fight back, it'll make them better. But if their nature is to get punched in the mouth and just kind of like, well, you know, I guess we're just not very good. You know, we'll get beat up again and everybody will start making fun of us. You know, look, they have to respond, right? They, collectively as a group, have to say enough is enough. I'm tired of being the laughingstock of major college football in the ACC, and we're going to do something about it. They got to make up their minds they're going to do that, right? Because I'm tired of it. I'm tired. That's part of my legacy, right? And so, yes, they got to respond to that. So going against a really good defense every day, hopefully they're getting a lot of fights. I'd be curious to know how many fights there are on the field, because if guys are pushing me, you know, again, here's the attitude that you have to have. Don't take no crap off nobody, and you substitute the words, right? And so if guys are, you know, doing drills, competitive drills, you know, board drills and Oklahoma drills and 7-on-7, all that stuff. And I hope there's fights out there. I haven't heard because we're not out there. But I would think if they're competing at that high level and you have any kind of pride at all, you are going to get in a fight, right? And then when your guy gets in a fight, guess what? All the other offensive linemen come up and start getting fights with you, you know, and before you know it, you got offensive and defensive linemen fighting each other and just all kinds of chaos, you know, and coaches standing in the back laughing, going, this is great, because it is great. It means you're competitive. It means you have some pride. And that's the thing that this group collectively has to grab hold of. We have to figure that out. Because again, I'm tired of it. And I hope they are. If they got anything at all, they are. All right, I'm done.
Well, I agree with you. Every year I played, and I was not very good, so it was always incumbent that I get in a fight the first day of full pass, just so everybody would know that I might not could block them, but I was willing to fight them. But Bob, I wanted to ask you, based off what Mike Norvell has said this week, how do you think the offensive line has responded to this past Saturday scrimmage?
It sounds like it's been a positive response. You know, he brought a lot of offensive players into the coaches' offices on Sunday, and they went through kind of play by play. Here's what broke down on some of those negative plays, or the ones that just didn't work out, went for no gain. You know, here's here's what happened. It wasn't everybody. It was just this one guy here. You didn't do exactly as we were saying. So I think it's again to that point of you've got 11 guys on the field and 9 or 10 are doing exactly everything as the way it was drawn up. And just it's the 1 or 2 that missed the block or something just didn't go right. And I think they need to know they're close, but they also need to know mentally dial it in, and close isn't going to get you a positive play. It's execute it the way we drew it up, and then you're going to see the positive results. So yes, the offense is bouncing back. I think that is a positive overall.
Yeah, I know you were going to follow up.
I was going to say, to Bob's point, going back to that scrimmage, I think I said this on the other podcast, it's never as bad as you think, it's never as good as you think. And so I knew when they looked at the film, they would find some positive things that they could build on, and that the fact that they responded at all is encouraging to me. So, sorry, Jerry.
Yeah, Mark, I wanted to ask you, I mean, you were, I think, a coach in the early 90s when our defense would dominate the offense in scrimmages. And in August, the defense would just dominate. And then the offense come Saturday would go out there and put up some big numbers. Is my memory correct on that?
Yeah, especially in a camp situation, especially early in camp, the defense is usually pretty vanilla. And then as camp moves on, they start putting in some twists and turns just when the offense is starting to get their feet under them and starting to get things coordinated. Defense comes up with some twists and turns and blitzes and different looks, and all of a sudden, you change one thing after you've been drilling something for a week or so, and then all of a sudden, offensive linemen, their heads are spinning, right, and everybody. So it's not uncommon for that to happen. We're all trying to build to something, and they build at different rates, it seems. So, that was the way it was, but again, it was competitive. And when you watch the film, you understand why something happened. And it's easy. Here's the thing: it's all correctable. If it's not an issue of ability or attitude and effort, then it's correctable, and we can get better and learn from it. That's the important thing. If the defense is dawning, yes, okay. Can we learn from it? Can we get better? Right. That's the important thing.
So when you were a coach, did you have offensive lines that were struggling in that period of time when you were going against a great defense every day? Were you having to try to find pieces to that offensive line during two-a-days?
Oh, absolutely. Again, you're trying to find, as a coach, you're trying to find who you can depend on. Who are the guys that we're going to go to war with for the next 11 weeks? And who are the guys that, we want to keep in reserve? Or a young guy that we want to keep up, with us, and say, we want him to get used to the process, get used to how do we do things during the week? How do we prepare for games? All that kind of thing. Because look, once we get to the point where we're prepping for games, all the learning's over. I mean, you're going to get 15 minutes a day, individual period, to work on technique and refine some things. But, once this time is over, we got what we got. And so that's why it is so critical for us to discern who are the guys that we can depend on, who are the guys that we can build up from here, and can we win football games with these guys? That's what's going on right now, and everybody's trying to figure out.
Well, it's going to be fun. Go ahead, Jerry.
One last question. I mean, to me, continuity is critical on the offensive line. And in an ideal world, you like to get your 5, and unless one of them's really failing, stick with that 5, barring injury.
Ideally, I don't know that I've ever been in a situation where that's held true for real extended periods of time, maybe 2, 3, 4 games even. Inevitably, somebody's going to get hurt. Something happens where you're going to have to start moving pieces around. The thing that you got to figure out as a coach when you go into with a position group like the offensive line is, okay, what do I have? Who kind of depend on? Do I have 3 tackles, 3 guards, and 2 centers? All right. If my starting left guard gets hurt, do I put in the second team left guard, or do I take my starting center, move him over, move the backup center in because he's really the next best guy? But am I weakening 2 positions by doing that? These are the things you got to figure out, And the biggest thing is, do I have pieces? Because like we've been in the past or the last couple of years, we haven't even had the first 5. If we can get the first 5, that's a step forward for us. If we can get a 7, that's great. If we get 6, that's great. I mean, that's where we are. Having 8 would be incredible. We get to be like, the elite like we used to be, and we have, we can run out the Kentucky Derby out there and run 2 full teams out. That would be ideal. But we're a long way from that for sure.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this group progresses. And obviously, I think that their improvement may be, as far as any position group on the team, is probably the most important group to see take great strides from last year, even more so than probably the quarterback, because obviously if you can run the ball, it takes a little bit of pressure off the quarterback. So, all right, guys, last week we played a game called Spirit or Ferret, and there was some confusion on how to spirit or ferret, so we have changed the name of the game. And it's called Spears Up or Spears Down, or Spear Up, Spear Down if you're talking individually. But so if you agree with this, it's Spears Up. If you agree with it, don't agree with it, it's Spears Down. FSU, if all 4 quarterbacks are healthy, Jordan Travis, Chubba Purdy, Tate Rodemaker, and James Blackman, all 4 quarterbacks will play at some point this season. Spears Up or Spears Down?
Spears up.
Spears up.
Spears up.
All right, we're all in agreement. All 4 Spears up for FSU playing all 4 quarterbacks. All right, we do not exactly know what is going on with Jordan Travis, and we don't know exactly how long Chubba Purdy will be out with his broken collarbone, which brings us to our next Spear Up or Spear Down question. Tight end Wyatt Rector was a quarterback before he moved to tight end this spring and was just placed on scholarship. Will Wyatt Rector line up at quarterback at some point this season? Spears up or Spears down?
Spears down. I say Cam Akers.
Cam Akers is the plan for the Rams.
Oh, okay.
We wouldn't have a lot of these questions if Cam was still here.
That's the truth.
All right. Go ahead, Jay. Spears up.
I would say Spears down, because they're going to need to keep Rector, I think, at tight end. We don't have enough depth there at tight end, and I think you'd weaken 2 positions by moving them. It would only be out of necessity.
Bob?
Yeah, I say Spears down. I'm drawing a blank. Was it Ja'Kai Douglas or Corey Wren that played a lot of high school quarterback? I think you start to look at other options and not make Rector a quarterback again. I think there are some options you could look to as a emergency quarterback.
Yeah, we talked about Travis Jay off the record because Mike Coe, as head coach in high school, really thinks he's a heck of a quarterback. Rector, I'm gonna go it alone. Spears up. He will play quarterback at least one series at some point during the season, particularly maybe early on when we're only 2 deep at quarterback. So, of course, I think it would be fascinating to see, and maybe they have a package for him. All right. Our last Spears Up and Spear Down question for episode 4. Obviously, the Sanford game was postponed or canceled when the Southern Conference decided it was not going to play this fall. FSU went in search of an 11th game, an out-of-conference game, and scheduled a game with Jacksonville State out of Jacksonville, Alabama on October 3rd, which means that FSU has an open date on September 19th. So they'll play one game against Georgia Tech on September 12th, and then won't play again until the 26th down at Miami. Is having an open week after your opener against Georgia Tech more advantageous than playing Sanford in week 2 because Norvell and his staff did not have a chance to implement as much of their offense as they would, or defense in the spring? Does it give you is that extra week of early time off where you can dedicate your time to putting more and more of the offense or defense in? Is that an advantage of Florida State or a detriment to Florida State?
So is it an advantage that we –
So have the open week in week 2.
I'm going to wait for Salva to answer.
Yeah. So this is the advantage is yes, it is an advantage if you have a veteran team. If you have a veteran team and you can get that first game out of the way and get all those bugs ironed out, and you can build on that. I think for us, with the inexperience that we have, I think it's a disadvantage. I think we need to play as many games as we can, leading up to it. And yeah, I'd rather have a game under our belt, another game that was easier under our belt. So I say disadvantage. Spears down.
Spears down. All right, Bob. Spears up. Spears down.
I was leaning Spears down. I think Mark sold me. I agree with his reasoning.
Yep, I'm going to double down on Mark.
Well, I'm going to choose to disagree with everybody, which is shocking to everyone I know. I'm going Spears up. It's a good thing. Coach Norvell had concerns coming into camp that they were not going to be able to install as much of their offensive or defensive systems as they wanted because of the way they were going to have to practice. They started out 2-a-days or whatever they call camp. There's not 2-a-days anymore, as we all know. Creature of habit. I have a hard time not calling them 2-a-days. But anyway, long story short, he mentioned that because of missing spring and because of the way they were having to practice, where they were practicing in segments early on, they might have to limit some of what they were going to install. So I think you play Georgia Tech, you come back and you continue to install. You got 2 weeks to get ready for Miami. You don't have to worry about game planning for Sanford or anybody else that week. So I think it's an advantage just because of the unique nature of how they've had to implement what they're wanting to do offensively and defensively. Well, guys, I appreciate you guys joining me for episode 4. It's always fun to sit down and chat, and I hope that Spears up, Spears down was much easier to understand than spirit or fear it, because I know that I confused the living daylights out of Mark and Jerry last week with some of my questions. But
I'm just an offensive lineman. I mean, or a ball coach. That doesn't.
You do probably have some problems with the continued repetitive head-to-head stuff, as we all do. But again, I appreciate everybody listening in to Seminole Sidelines, presented by the Osceola. And again, please go to theosceola.com if you want to try out a trial subscription. We do have a 30-day free trial. Just enter FREE30 when you go to the subscription tab in the discount code field and give us a try for 30 days. If you like us, join us for good and become a member of our Osceola tribe. But guys, we'll catch up for episode 5 here shortly, where we will talk about the linebacker group. Thanks for joining me.
This has been another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. To subscribe to the Osceola, go to theosceola.com. Go Noles!